Hey everybody, Steve Kosniewski here. Oh, there we go. Hey everybody, Steve Kosniewski here. Hope you're all doing well on this lovely Monday evening. Um, if you are tuning in, go ahead and give me a thumbs up that you can hear me. I always get a little panicky. I'm millennial, so you probably noticed my millennial pause, and I always get a little panicky that there might be something wrong with my equipment. So let me know in the comments if you can hear me. Otherwise, I'll just be wasting my time talking, which would not be the first time. Um, I don't think I've said this anywhere, but I wanted to apologize to Brennan LaFaro, who I met up with at Merrimack Valley Halloween Book Festival this past autumn. Um, kind of a funny story. I like to, when I go to events like this, like Merrimack, I like to do little TikToks, interview people, so it's not just me on my TikTok page. And I did a whole interview with Brennan. We did, 2, 3 minutes. I think we might even have done it twice. And what I didn't realize was that the whole time I had my Square device in my phone, which is, it actually goes into your headphones, piece, what used to be the headphone piece. So I did not record any audio. I got a great 2 minute video of Brennan going like this and a long, thin squeal. Um, so it took me ages to even figure that out because, again, I had my Square device because I was, at an event taking money and everything. I left my Square device in the whole time. It took me ages to figure out that I had done bad audio and ended up just deleting it. So, Brennan, next time I see you, you're next up on the list. But Uh, what I really wanted to talk about tonight was the most recent event that I went to, which was Christopher Golden's House of Last Resort weekend in beautiful Portsmouth, New Hampshire. So, this was a one-time event. I think it will be the only House of Last Resort weekend. House of Last Resort being Christopher Golden's upcoming novel, which I got early because I went to the event. So, I mean, there may be similar events to this in the future. It might catch on as once and done things like this might happen again in the future, but there will never be another, Christopher Golden's House of Last Resort weekend. So I got to attend the only one. I'm really glad that I did. I was not looking forward to going to an event in January because of the weather, and we actually had snow here in central Pennsylvania the week before that gave me pause. We had snow apparently down here during the event, but not in New Hampshire. And it's just generally a scary, time to be traveling. And I spent a couple weeks leading up to this event, looking into whether I could take trains, planes, automobiles, Greyhound, Amtrak, all of that stuff. It was all way too expensive for what I was going to get. And what I was going to get was 15, 16, 17 hours on buses, trains, Ubers, for hundreds of dollars. Like, if there was just like a train from Harrisburg to Portsmouth, I probably would have hopped on it. But it was like, get off in Boston, take an Uber to another train station in Boston, take the local rail to Dover, New Hampshire. Well, you don't need to hear you don't need to hear all the specifics. Just understand that it was a really, crummy, shitty uh, situation to have to go via public transport. So I didn't. I decided to just drive. Kept an eye on the weather, and I'm glad that I did because it only took 7 hours out of my day. Not a bad drive. I mean, it's a pretty bad drive. I usually don't drive much more than 2 hours in any regular kind of time frame, maybe 4 hours to Williamsburg. But I've done 8 and 9 hour drives before, so I was okay with doing this. And ultimately, the weather was on my side. I'm back in Air Studio International headquarters, so obviously I made it back all right. So ultimately, saving hundreds of dollars and saving full days of time was worth it. So, like I said, the event started, I guess, Thursday night. A few people went up Wednesday night and got a fun surprise. I was actually watching the news because, again, I'm a fucking millennial and I'm just a fucking old person. I was watching the news the other day, and it said Trump was going to be in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. It's, I mean, like, no offense to the lovely town of Portsmouth, New Hampshire, but I had never heard of it before. So to see it on the news, and I'm like, I'm going up there, and I immediately look over, and I'm like, oh, okay, January 17th. I guess we'll be fine. But apparently, all the folks that went up on Wednesday to begin, rolling out the red carpets and hanging up the signs and stuff, were greeted by a Trump rally at the very hotel where Christopher Golden's House of Last Resort weekend was taking place. So I believe somebody had to probably physically restrain Chris. If you know anything about Chris, you know he's very progressive, great, great guy. Yes, I do equate those two things. Um, Although I guess they're shitty progressive, but anyway, he is a great guy and a very progressive guy. Um, so I assume somebody had to physically restrain him at his house to keep him from, going to the hotel and getting into fights with the Red Hats. Um, but so even though I knew that that was going to be happening, New Hampshire's a big place, Portsmouth is a big place. I had no idea it was happening at the same hotel. Nor, I gather, did any of the convention planners. So I went up on Thursday when it started. So I basically, I said to myself, I'd like to meet up with some folks for BarCon. There was a little bit of programming. I wasn't super planning on attending that. I was like, I'll get there when I get there. I'll leave early, get plenty of sleep. That's the key thing with driving. 7 hours is get plenty of sleep the night before, be ready to be on the road for 7 hours, and get your podcasts and your music and your audiobooks and everything ready for the event. If you're driving alone, like I often do. Sometimes I go places with primarily Wesley Southard, although I've also gone places with Brian Keene and Mary San Giovanni. John Urbansick drove to Brownsville Screams back in October. But normally, just generally speaking, going to events, I drive alone. So that's my whole thing, is being prepared to entertain myself on the road. So I did Thursday, left, got a lot of sleep Wednesday night. I'm sorry, my camera's acting funny, so it seems to have a mind of its own tonight. Maybe I have to oil it or something. I don't know. So I hopped on the road early on Thursday. Got there. I was expecting to get there around 6 or 7. Planning in for a trip that long. You've got to at least once stop and get gas for a sedan like I drive. Um, so it was getting to be about 6:30, and Brian Keene, who was organizing the weekend, texted me and was like, "Are you going to be here for the opening ceremonies?" And I'm like, I don't know. I wasn't planning to. He's like, "It's 7," and I'm like, "Okay, I should be there at 6:40. I just won't check in. I'll just go right to the opening ceremonies." He's like, "It's very important that you be there." I'm like, okay, cool. So I don't know. I don't know if they're giving me a medal or what. I mean, I deserve a medal. Uh, you know, I'm the backbone of this industry, and I had just been on the road for 7 hours, so I didn't know what to expect. So I went down to the opening ceremonies, and you know what I realized? I maybe World Horror, but I think of all the conventions I've ever done, and at this point I have done dozens, if not hundreds. I don't think I've ever attended a convention opening ceremony before. Um, Not to disparage them, I don't need that to get geared up for a convention. I don't need anybody to go over the etiquette with me. I've done panels actually teaching people convention etiquette. I know it perfectly well. So I think this was either the first or second opening ceremonies I've ever actually even been to. So Brian and Chris were there. They're like, "Thanks so much for coming." And there's a crowd already on Thursday night. There's a crowd. Um, and then Brian's talking and talking, and then he calls me up, and he calls up about five other people, Zach Rosenberg and V Castro. I don't want to say I don't want to say anybody else in case I forget the names or get the wrong names. Those are the only two I remember explicitly. But he calls up about four or five people, and he's like, "This is your security team," and I'm like, "Oh, that's what I'm here for." So I mean, I'm happy to do it. I'm perfectly happy, um, and I understand why Brian asked or failed to ask me, but had me do that. Um, so what he was saying was, if you feel unsafe at this convention for any reason, come to look for one of these people, come and talk to them. They'll get staff, they'll get cops, they'll get you a cup of hot chocolate, whatever you need. Which I'm very happy to do that, and I usually extend that invitation. I mean, I don't do it when there's like professional security and stuff at a convention, which some cons have. But I'm always happy. You can always rely on me, uh, whether I know you or not, at any convention. If you need some kind of safety, you need some kind of help, reach out to me. So I got designated as that, and I was like a little bit worried. I'm like, all right, I don't know the area, but like anything, the main thing is be kind to people, talk to people, get the convention staff, give people a safe space, take them to your room, or get them off the floor, whatever you need to do. Um, so that was very, uh, that was very, I was glad to be able to do that. A little bit surprising. So then Brian and Chris did a reading and a Q&A. Um, so the weekend was very much about celebrating Christopher's new release, but also his 30 years in the industry and all the people that he helped. And I often say on these live, discussions and anywhere else that I can, this is an industry where you have to give a helping hand to the people coming up after you. That's what we do. It's kind of like a apprenticeship, industry. And Christopher Golden has helped many, many people over the years. So this was a celebration of all of his time doing that, and also of his new release that we really want to be a great success for. So if you haven't already, go to Amazon, go to Goodreads, or wherever you like to purchase books or mark your books, as TBR, and go ahead right now. I don't mind if you pause unless you're watching this live, which thank you. Um, and mark House of Last Resort by Christopher Golden as TBR and get it as soon as it comes out. So like I said, I have my copy early and signed, which is pretty cool. So that was the formal part of Thursday evening. And, then that evening, John Durgan was up. Sorry, I am indeed checking my notes. I made a few notes here, which I don't normally do. But like I said, this was a convention I've never been to, and it will probably never occur again. So I'm not super familiar with like, oh yeah, here are the beats of the weekend that I went through. Like I could normally just do these things on the fly. With this being a new convention, new town, I did make a couple of notes here. So my good friend John Durgan was there. Very excited to get to meet up with him. I guess I met him. I've heard of him, very much so. He's really blowing up in the community with what's his book called? The Cursed Among Us is his big book. That's not what he read from this weekend, which I'll get to in a minute. But he has a new release coming out. So I got to see Durgan. So I was saying we tabled. I think the year before last, we tabled together at Merrimack in Haverhill, Massachusetts. So he's always a great time, a great guy, a great time. I got to meet his wife actually. So New Englanders, local. He convinced his wife to come out, support him, and that was really cool. I also met, just going out to have a cigarette, I met a new author I've never met before, Millie Price. And Millie was a little bit cagey with me at first, and then, we got to talking, and I forget if she had heard of me or if she just, very quickly got that vibe that I was an author. And then she kind of admitted, yeah, I'm an author. And it sounds like she's about to blow up too. So um, that was a really cool connection to make. And I kept seeing Millie throughout the weekend, very much bonded. Um, and then we'll get back to Millie and John when we get to Saturday. So this is Thursday night. Um, this convention, I don't know if it's New Hampshire law or if it just happened to be the hotel. The hotel bar shut down around 10:45. So it was a lot earlier nights. Every night at the convention was a lot earlier than what I'm used to at conventions, which is fine because it means you're getting up and it's better for the early morning programming. Um, so the next morning, I did not have any programming that I was on. So I just got up for about 11, or I mean, I was up before 11, but I got up, went down into the lobby around 11. Brian and Mary were at the table, the welcome table, where you hand out your badges and everything. They were working over there, and I was hungry. I hadn't eaten. I think I didn't eat. Yeah, that's right. I didn't eat on Thursday night. I ate something when I got up, or on the road rather late. So I think I ate around 4, and then I was like, I'm good for dinner. But then, when you do that, when you eat like an old person at old country buffet, uh, you're kind of hungry the next morning. So I'm famished at this point. I was just, Brian and Mary are busy, so I was about to ask them if they wanted me to just get them a burger or something, and they're like, "No, let's have lunch." So we sit down, and along comes Olaf Bookheim, who is a publisher over in Leipzig, Germany, and his wife Yuka, who I've met them both before. I think in Haverhill, yeah, 2 years before, the same year that I met Durgan. Um, so Olaf and Yuka come down, and we're like, let's have lunch. And then Victor Laval, who I've never met before, just kind of walks in, and he's like, "Oh, hey, you're Mary, aren't you?" And he recognized me, and he's like, I just wanted to say hello to you guys." And we're like, "Come sit, eat." And he's like, "No, no, I don't want to interrupt." And we're like, "No, no, come sit with us." So I got to meet Victor Laval. Very cool, very down to earth guy. Um, that was, one of the definitely the highlights of the weekend, for me. I don't get starstruck. I think I've probably been starstruck once or twice. I've related this in other videos, but the first time I met Brian Keene, first time I met Carlton Mellick. But by and large, I don't get starstruck even by like famous authors or act. I'm usually like, eh. I mean, I don't know what would happen if I met like Ryan Reynolds or somebody on that level. I don't know, or I don't know, somebody I've been watching since like Michael Keaton or somebody. I don't know what would happen in those situations, but the kind of celebrities that I run into, I don't usually get flustered with, which is a cool, thing to have because no one's ever really given me that treatment, so I don't know how it feels, but I assume people don't much like when you're like, "Oh my God, you're the greatest person ever. I love you so much. I've read all your books. I saw all your movies." Um, I mean, that's probably fine and flattering up to a certain point, but then I think you probably like talk to me like I'm a human being. So I had just little squinch of that meeting Victor Laval. Um, but we had a great time together. The one, two, three, four, the five of us. Um, and then let's see. Oh, right. So then I was like, well, I should start to do some programming stuff. I saw some stuff on Thursday night. I went and saw the End of the World as We Know It panel, and I just had this up a second ago. Um, who was on that? V. Castro. Eric LaRocca, Hillary Monahan, Joe Hill, and Brian, and Chuck Wendig was supposed to be on it. Now, Chuck Wendig did not make it down to this event, which is a shame because I actually brought a book for Chuck. I'm not sure if I've ever said this before, but about 10 years ago, Chuck Wendig inspired me to write Broken Down Heroes of the Western Night. Um, I can't remember the exact wording, but on his blog he said, if you don't think you can write a book, he said, just go ahead and write 300 words a day. And if you can write 300 words a day, within 6 months you'll have a book. And this was, it's partly a mathematical thing, because he's right. If you do that, you will. But it's also kind of like the old joke about, if you can put salt on a bird's tail, you can catch it, because, of course, if you get close enough to a bird to put salt on its tail, you can just reach out and grab it. So what he was saying was, if you sit down to write 300 words a day, you'll write more, and then your book will be done. And I was like, I wonder if that actually works. And I sat down, and that's how I wrote Broken Down Heroes. I was like, there's some days, not every day. Some days I just did the 300, and I was like, that's all I can do today. But a lot of days I was doing 3,000 like regular sets, and it was the act of guaranteeing I was going to write 300 words a day that got that book written. So I got a copy of that, and I wanted to give that to Chuck, but unfortunately he could not make it. I think he was sick or something. I don't know. I don't know Chuck's business. So anything would be a rumor, I guess. So that was a shame. Anyway, end of the world as we know it. They were talking about, their various apocalypses, the apocalypses they expect, the apocalypses they've written, etc., etc. Um, the other event on Friday night was the 30 Years with Christopher Golden panel, which was very cool. Um, Even more so, I think, than the opening ceremonies and the reading that Brian and Christopher did. This was like a real celebration of Christopher Golden. And, he reflected on his time in the industry, working on things like Buffy. There was a lot of Buffy talk. I think that that must be the great thing that he's most proud of. I mean, I know he also just recently did a Buffy audio cast play. Uh, but it sounded like that was the culmination of a career, of being a Buffy fanboy. I think he said that he wrote the first Buffy tie-in novel. Um, like 1996 or 7, I guess. Um, so that was very cool. Like I said, we were all there to support Chris, support his book. Um, So once that was over, that was kind of the keystone, the capstone of the evening. So I headed back out to the bar, and I realized, oh, it's like 9:45 at night. Again, I ate at 11. This is a funny thing. So I will say this. I know some of my friends were worried that I was there without my usual crew, like Wesley Southern, Wiley Young, the people that are about my age and that kind of thing. Um, the only thing that I found, I was very happy to hang out with a different crowd, get to know people like I said, Millie and Durgan and all those people, um, Olaf and Yuka and Victor Laval. Never thought I'd be saying that. Uh, the thing that I did notice was, I guess I didn't realize to what extent those guys keep me fed at cons. So whenever you get to that point of the night where you're like, I'm hungry, or what are we doing for dinner kind of thing, I guess that was what I seemed to really be lacking this weekend because I was just not eating. And then I'd be like, oh my God, I'm starving to death, and the bar's going to close in half an hour, and I don't know my way around here, and I don't know if there's any restaurants or anything. I guess I could have, in a pinch, gotten a pizza on DoorDash or something. Um, but anyway, I'm glad I didn't on Friday night. So Friday night, I sat down at the bar and I ordered up some food, and then Diana Foe sat next to me, and I had not met her before this event. I did meet her, I guess, Friday morning. So Maurice brought us, introduced us, which is very cool. And if you've never sat at a convention with Maurice, make that a point in your life. It is delightful. But yeah, basically Maurice was just like, oh hey, this is Diana. You know, you guys have never met. She was an editor. She is an editor at Arahuan Books, and formerly worked for Realm, which is what Cereal Box. You guys have all heard me talk about Cereal Box a million times because of Silverwood. So I guess we kind of crossed like ships in the night, and never quite met when I was working with Cereal Box. Um, so I sit down, chatting with Diana. I'm just like, oh hey, I just met you. Where are you from? Blah 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 blah. It's like Brooklyn. Oh, my sister's from Brooklyn. That's I've been to Brooklyn once or twice. So we're talking, um, and I go to friend her later on Facebook, and I see that she's friends with my sister, pseudonymously. She doesn't go by Kazanuski. And I text my sister, and I'm like, "Do you know Diana Foe?" And she's like, "Yeah, we know each other really well." And I'm like, "This is so random. I know two. No, I know three people. I know Marco Palmieri too. I know three people who live in Brooklyn, and two of them know each other. So small world." Um, so I was chatting with Diana. Oh, Zach Rosenberg was there at this event. Zach's always a blast to talk to. Um, and I was also talking about the next French press anthology. I know we hated it so much we had to do it again. Putting together Perfectly Fine Neighborhood. So we've already the French press crew. We've been talking behind the scenes about doing a werewolf anthology. Finally. So I was kind of picking people's minds that night about who would be good for a werewolf anthology. And I think I've got some good opportunities. I mentioned it to Zach, and he gave me his pitch for his werewolf story, which I'm really excited about. But we've got a couple of people down for it now, so that should be good. So like I said, like Thursday night, Friday night, bar shuts down pretty early. Actually, go to bed early, and I'm like, well, this is good because Saturday morning, the first reading is John Durgan and Millie Price. Ironically, uh, I had not met Millie before. I had met Durgan. Um, I probably would have intended to go to his reading, but I didn't know his reading partner before Thursday night, just by happenstance. And I was like, no, I've definitely got to go. And they've got the 10 a.m. reading, which I've had 10 a.m. readings and that kind of thing. And you got to understand at a convention, people are drinking all night. They're not wanting to get up for the early programming. But I was like, you know what? They might be well attended. They might be well attended because the bar shuts down at 11. Didn't seem like there was a big, after party scene. I mean, maybe I just wasn't invited. I don't know. But I thought it might be well attended, and I show up, and it actually was pretty well attended. Lots of people in the audience. Durgan reads from his new book, Kosa, which is, I want to say, a Rapunzel retelling. Kosa means hair in Croatian, but obviously with that Durgan, dark fairy tale twist to it. So he reads from Kosa. He has Kosa, which is not out yet. Oh, I don't think I got a copy of it, but I think he just had like his reading copy, or maybe one or two. Um, and Millie, I can't remember the name of the piece that she read, but it's being shopped around, so we will know that soon. Um, both knocked it out of the park. I was glad even to get up at 10 a.m. on a Saturday, to go and see them, support my friends. Um, And Saturday was also my big day for programming. It was actually my only day for programming, but it was all stacked up. So I had three events. Um, so I had a reading with Paul Tremblay, which is really cool. I've known Paul for a number of years now. Um, I remember actually, what were we playing? Poker? Or no, we were playing the werewolf game at Scares That Cares in like 2015 or 16. Uh, yeah, a whole gang of Paul and me and Rachel Autumn Deering and a whole gang of people. We found this like hidden room in Williamsburg, and we went out in there to get drunk and play the werewolf game one night. So I've known Paul for many years. He's very cool. He's always been very very good to me. Um, and of course now though he's blowing up and he's the king of the industry. Which I think I've mentioned before, um, is really cool to see. And of course you want that for yourself, but to get to see that happening to other people, people you are friendly with and happy to call friends, it's really cool to actually get to see that. So I got to do a reading with Paul. I'm going to say I'm usually not nervous about doing readings. I mean, I get that normal nervousness that I suppose everybody does, but I love performing, so I normally am like quickly over that. Um, and I write a new piece every year for my readings for that year, so I don't get too long in the tooth. Like maybe I give a presentation like three, four, five times, but I don't give it so many times that my entire audience has heard it and now it's played out. So I had written a piece for 2024, but some fun things happened at the convention, and I sat down Saturday afternoon. I had started abortively. I wanted to write another piece just for House of Last Resort weekend. I started it abortively Friday night, and I couldn't make it work. And Saturday I sat down. I'm like, can I edit this? Can I make this work? Do I just have to use the other piece? And I sat down, and it came right out, like exactly what I wanted to say. Which is sometimes the way it is with me for the folks that are watching this for the writing advice and that kind of thing. Sometimes I just have to toss everything out and start over because like those thoughts and ideas and things that I was working through on the first draft that weren't quite gelling. Now that I've kind of put it down in words once, it'll like come out much more smoothly the second time. Sometimes this was the case. Sometimes it never comes. Then you just end up with shit on your hard drive. So the second time I did the reading for House Last Resort, came out perfectly. Um, so I went downstairs, met up with Paul, and we go to do our readings. I was really gratified. Uh, oh, well, what I was saying before about I don't normally get nervous. I was a little nervous for this. Just to be standing next to Paul Tremblay, even though, like I said, we've known each other for a while, I know there's still that, you know, uh, level of expectation from the audience, and I was a little bit worried that he was going to have an enormous audience. And of course he did, which meant that I did, which is good. I mean, it's good to get your name out there. It's a little bit scary, a little bit daunting. I'm usually fine with getting up and making a clown of myself in front of 5, 10, 15 people. In this case, it was like the entire convention. Um, but that's all right. Consummate professional. Did my reading. I was very gratified. A lot of people came up to me afterwards and said, "Great reading, good work, man." So I think it went over well. I even had, you know, a lot of people were asking questions. Millie Price was in the audience, supporting me the same way I had supported her, and we had gotten to talking about Air Studio, of course. So she was asking me balloon questions after the reading, and I'm like, you know me, I'm happy to talk about balloons nonstop. So I'm probably talking about balloons in front of this horror audience that probably wants to ask Paul Tremblay what the ending of Head Full of Ghosts meant or something. Um, But no, I was really gratified by the response I got. I wasn't 100% sure about the second reading, which is ironic. I did the House of Last Resort one, and then I did my 2024 one that I had written, some time ago. Um, so I'm not sure if the second one was as well received. They were both, about 5 minutes. It was a single reading time frame, but I read two separate pieces. Um, and then the other really cool thing about doing a reading with Paul and then doing a signing with Paul. So we pretty much immediately, I think we read from 2:45 to 3:30. And Paul read. I forgot to mention. Paul read from his new book, Horror Movie, which sounds like it's going to be really cool. And I think it's about what he's learning about work being, like I was talking about before, being the toast of the town and being famous and having movies made of your work and that kind of thing. So it sounds like it might be a little bit satirical there. I think you guys are going to really enjoy that from what I've heard of it. I don't believe that one's out yet. So we read from 2:45 to 3:30. Then we around 4 o'clock we did our signing. And again, I mentioned Chuck. I told the whole Chuck Wendig story. Chuck was supposed to be there too. Could not make it. So it's just me and Paul. And everybody was really cool. Again, I assume everybody came to see Paul, but then everybody came to see me afterwards. And like I said, that's where a lot of people were coming up to me and saying, "Oh, your signing was so good. Let me get your books." So in that hour-long slot, I sold like half the books that I brought. It would have been the amount of books that I sold would have been a good weekend for me, uh, condensed into an hour. So thank you, Christopher Golden. Thank you, House of Last Resort Weekend. Thank you, organizers, Brian, Mary, Chris, and everybody, and to the crowd especially, and the fans. Thank you. I hope you won't all be horribly disappointed by your Kazanowski books that you walked off with. Um, so that was really cool. So, oh, yes, and of course, now I've never had this happen to me before, but signing with Paul Tremblay means you go long. So I had noticed Joe Hill and Owen King. I guess they were the big draw of the weekend. They were signing in the morning, starting at like 10, and they had a regular slot like 10 to 11 or something, and they're going to like 10 to 12 or something. Uh, which is what happens with your headliners. So this was happening to Paul. We were supposed to be out of there at like 4:45. Thankfully, um, we were the last signing of the day, so we weren't like stepping on anybody else's toe. Like we probably would have just been like, "Hey, sorry, everybody, we got to pack up and leave." I mean, maybe I don't know. It didn't come up because we were doing the last signing of the day, but it's going on and on and on because Paul's line is so long, and everybody's really cool, and they're coming up to me afterwards. So thank you for your pity. I appreciate it, everybody. Um, so we're going to like 5:15, something like that. It wasn't like completely bonkers out of control, but I was like, I've never done a signing that went long before, so I'm like, if people come for me, occasionally they do, but if people come for me, they get to see me in the first 5 minutes. So that was really cool. Got a couple of bucks to offset, the cost of the weekend. Uh, just very, very gratifying weekend for me. Um, the last thing that I did, the last formal presentation that I did, was writing horror for audio. So that was Brian and I. Oh, Clay McLeod Chaplin. Sorry, Clay. Clay McLeod Chapman. Um, and Diana Foe, who I had dinner with the night before. Because of her time on Serial Box, Brian and I keep saying Serial Box. I know it's Realm now. It is Realm now. It was Serial Box at the time we did it. Um, so Brian and I were talking about Silverwood, and Brian was a radio DJ way back. Uh, was his name Brian Rage or Brian Wrath or something? Uh, and Clay. Oh, right. Clay did some podcasting that he was talking about. which was really cool. And then thank God Diana was there because she knew all about the contracts and the actual, behind the scenes stuff. So we're all like, duh, sometimes you have to write like it's all dialogue. And she's, rattling off all this information about, here's how you actually, here's the rights that you want to keep when you're signing a contract with an audiobook company and all the really valuable stuff. Um, so that panel was, well, I guess it was towards the end of the night at that point. But it was still fairly well attended, and people were very interested in audiobooks. That was cool. Um, and then that was it for the weekend. Or did I? Maybe I attended something else. I know this makes for great viewing. Oh, no, that was Friday night. Was the 30 years of Friday night was the 30 years of Christopher Golden. Oh, okay. So the big centerpiece, I did not attend, but I can listen to it later. The big centerpiece was Chris Golden, Victor Laval, Paul Tremblay on a podcast um, called The Bookcase. So that was at 8:30. So I did not actually attend that in person, but I may go back and listen to that later. Of course, that should be really cool whenever that comes out. Um, I don't know why I didn't go to that. Maybe I was just yeah, I was probably just wiped out from doing all my panels that day. I mean, it takes it out of me. It's I love performing like I was saying earlier, but it's so emotionally draining. Um, the times, and I have on occasion done like 6 or 7 panels in a day, and I'm just destroyed at the end of it. Um, so then that night was like the big night for BarCon. So I got to hang out with Durgan. Rio Ewers was there, and Ronald Malfi, who, if you've never been at a convention with them, they're the fun ones, by which I mean the drunk ones. Uh, I got to hang out. I was really glad I got to hang out with Olaf and Yuka a lot. Hope I didn't spill my guts too much to them, but uh, very, kind and thoughtful conversation partners. I won't say too much about that. What happens at the con stays at the con, except for the part about Rio and Malfi getting drunk. That's pretty common knowledge, I'd say at this point. Um, got to hang out with a couple of fans. I do indeed remember their names, but I don't like to on these videos and public-facing things, that sort of thing. I don't like to out anybody's name who's not a public figure, like Durgan's wife or these fans. Uh, that was probably the most time I've spent hanging out with actual fans of mine. That was pretty cool. So we got to have dinner, or I got to have dinner. Everybody else was drinking by this point. Remember what I said about Wes and Wiley keep me fed at these things. So I just kept having to order burgers at the bar. Sorry to the lovely town of Portsmouth, New Hampshire, that I did not get a better taste of your local cuisine. Uh, I did get to have the clam chowder though. I hope I'm saying that right. Um, so oh, the other cool thing I got to do. So I don't remember if I've announced this publicly or not yet, but I'm planning to go to British Fantasy Con this year in October in Chester, England. So Philip Fracassi, I know, attended last year. And I don't know him very well. I know him. We shook hands at StokerCon, um, but this year I walked up to him. So sorry, Phil. I know you were trying to eat your dinner too. Um, Sorry to interrupt your fish witch, but he was very gracious and kind. And I talked to him for some time about, going overseas, about British Fantasy Con, um, and of course about the boys in the valley. So he was very gracious and kind and let me jabber on like a jackass. Um, yeah, it was a really incredible, unique weekend. There was a different vibe to Christopher Golden's House of Last Resort weekend to most of the um, conventions and events that I've gone to. It was. I hope that Christopher knows now, how valued he is in this industry. Um, Now remember, if you're watching this video, and I'm gonna plug it one more time. I know you already know to buy all my shit. I don't care, whatever. But go. I mean, that's. I appreciate it. I appreciate all of my fans. I appreciate you. I appreciate you spending your hard-earned money on me. I really do. But what I'm getting at is, we put this weekend together to celebrate Christopher Golden, 30 years in the industry, and the House of Last Resort. So please, if you're watching this, please go and buy a copy. Uh, Text him, tweet him, Facebook him, whatever. Let him know that he is, loved, honored, respected, and all the good stuff. Any good stuff you've been sitting on about Christopher Golden, let him know about it this year. Let him know about it by grabbing a copy of House of Last Resort. I think that's really what it boils down to, was, that and friendship, getting to see people like, Brian and Christopher that were friends for however many years. Um, and for me, getting to see old friends, getting to meet new friends, and yeah, it was really cool. I don't have anything else very poignant to say. So hey, thanks everybody. Thanks for spending your Monday night with me. If you're watching this live, if you're watching it later, um, thanks for watching. And oh wait, did I come up with a sign off? Oh, I did. That's right. Stay splattery, everybody.